Good evening to all and welcome to Byju's. I am Basavaraj. So we'll be continuing the disaster management, which we have done yesterday. So from there, we will be continuing, right? Okay, so hope I'm audible and visible to you all, right? Good evening. Done. So yesterday we made an effort in understanding what is important in the context of disaster management, basic ideas, and then we made a understanding of the terminologies like vulnerability, disaster, risk, crisis, etc. And apart from that, we made an effort in understanding how the flow has to be maintained there. And in that, we were discussing about the floods. And when we talk about the floods, I told that rural floods and urban floods were there. And from 2005 episode of Mumbai, we added the fourth zone called as urban floods in the context of India's flood prone areas. And then I told the reason behind the urban floods are not same as what you get in the rural part. And the impact of the urban floods are also not same as what you get in the rural things. And vulnerability profile in the urban is also not same, because in the urban areas we come across slums where they don't have basic amenities. And apart from economic perspective also, where there is a large amount of disparities you can find in the urban areas, and lack of infrastructures in the slums make the conditions very worst. And that is the reason why the vulnerability profile in the urban area makes huge impact in the regions. It may be flood, it may be heat waves, it may be any type of disaster what you talk about. And that is the reason why they de-aligned the urban floods from the normal floods. And I also explained the characteristics of the urban floods. Now, continuing to this. Okay, exposure to toxic substances. So toxic substances is something different. Chemical hazard is exposure or explosion of something bad, right? So they are same with each other. So don't get much confused, right? So when we talk about chemical hazards, the best example of that is the methyl isocyanate, the leakage of methyl isocyanate in the context of Bhopal gas tragedy. That is a chemical impact. Is it clear? Okay, so don't get confused. So that is human error. I hope you might have knowing that Bhopal episode of 1984, methyl isocyanate from the Union Carbide factory, right? So that was also a disaster, but that is due to a chemical exposure, right? Okay. Now we'll continue from where we have left. Now we have to understand something about what are the reasons for the floods. One is heavy rainfall. Any region wherever we have heavy rainfalls, if we don't have proper drainage facilities, even though if you are having, the heavy downpour will not make the movement of water downwards. What we say, seepage of water will not be strong. So hence it can trigger the accumulation of water in that region. Then storm surges. What are storm surges? If you see the coastal areas, if you see the coastal areas, in the coastal areas, we always find the water bodies are there. Now, sometimes whenever low pressure is created in the water bodies, we all know that wind moves from high pressure to low pressure. So here the water pulls up, and this water pulls up on the surface of the ocean or the large water bodies. It will increase the water level in that areas. Surging of the water on the surface of the ocean or the sea. Now, whenever the floods are there or whenever the winds are there, when they carry this towards the coastal areas, maybe during tsunami or maybe during the storms, maybe during tsunami, maybe during the storms or during the cyclones. So this pooled water, maybe 2 meters or maybe 3 meters of pooled water on the surface of the ocean, that extra water which is accumulated due to low pressure, the water which enters here and creates a dome like extra water. And this extra water, when it enters into the coastal areas, we refer that as storm surges. So coastal areas are always vulnerable for storm surges, right? So it is associated with low pressure system where the water will accumulate and increase the water table, sorry, increase the level of water on the surface of the ocean, sea, or any large lakes, right? Then sudden release of water from the reservoirs like Chennai, where we find. So in the rainy season, when huge amount of water is accumulated, other land areas are also saturated with the water. So there is less seepage of water on the ground. And apart from that, urban infrastructure does not make the percolation of water very fast. And that is the reason why during the rainy season, when there is a sudden release, then large amount of water makes flooding in the areas. And this is what we have seen in the context of Chennai. I'm giving an example, right? Then global warming and climate change. So due to global warming and climate change, we find large amount of weather phenomena have been altered. And I told that with 1 degree increase in the temperature, the air will hold 7% of extra moisture, 7% of moisture, right? And that means that the air will be having large amount of moisture laden within that, and this air, when it collides with the mountains or any barrier, then by default it will bring heavy rainfall, right? So increasing of the temperature on the surface of the oceans or water bodies will always have large amount of moisture which is carried by the wind which is flowing on the surface of that, right? Then unplanned urbanization. So when the unplanned urbanizations are there, we don't have proper drainage facilities. So when there is no proper drainage facilities or when the debris are thrown, in that case, water lodging will be there. Water lodging will be there. And when you construct the buildings in the lowland areas, when you construct the buildings in the lowland areas, then it is very difficult to make the movement of water from there. So it will block the waters. It will block the waters. Blockages will be there, right? So hence accumulation of water will be there. And apart from that, the construction works in the urban areas are not yet been completed. So whenever heavy rainfalls are there, you will find the accumulation of the water are always seen in the context of the areas, any urban areas, wherever the bridge constructions are there, they are not completely done, or the geological factors may not provide them to have the proper systems. Then no proper drainage, where the linkages will not be there. Linkages will not be there. Linkages means linking from one lake to another lake. So generally in the urban areas, if this is lake 1, so this is linked with another lake, lake 2, and then it is made to channelize and flow. Now when we throw the debris, then there will be a disruption between one lake to another lake, and that makes the flooding in the urban areas. So the lakes which are referred as the natural watersheds or the water sinks in the urban areas. So when there is no connectivity between them, then during the heavy rainfall, this lake will spill in the neighboring areas like Tulsi, Vihar, and Powai. They will spill in the urban areas, and that creates the floods. Then encroachment of natural sinks. So generally these lakes, ponds, etc., they are encroached. They are encroached, one for construction activities, or second for agricultural activities, or for setting up of any industries in that areas, right? So large amount of water sinks or the watersheds have been encroached in the urban areas. then throwing of the debris which make these water bodies shallow. Then no accountability. There is no accountability between different machineries of the organization. So whenever if you approach any institute, then they will say that I'm not responsible for this particular event. So departments will not take the onus of that. So there is no proper coordination between the different departments. So there is no proper coordination between different departments. Then geology of that area. Many areas are there where we are having permeable rocks. So if the rocks are permeable, it will allow the water to move downward. But if that urban area has, say, non-permeable rock strata, if urban area has non-permeable rock strata, so during this, it is very difficult to make the water to percolate downward because non-permeability does not allow the water to move in. And that is where spilling up of water takes place. Apart from that, in the urban areas, due to large amount of migration, we find that the demography structure has been changed. And apart from that, large amount of urban areas have been removed. In the sense, the natural forests in the urban areas have been removed for settlements. And that is where we find demographic and environmental changes are seen, not only in the urban areas, even in the rural areas also, where the forests have been destroyed or embankments have been destroyed. So hence, the environmental capacity has been reduced. Always remember, you should always develop a proper resistance. And this resistance can be individual, society, or environment. So when the environment degrades, that environmental capacity or environmental resistance, when it becomes weak, then other factors are also affected by that particular event here. So these are the reasons for the floods. Now, next, what is the impact of the floods? Now, one is agriculture land, which is always affected by the floods. Now, if you talk about the agriculture land, if it is interior of the area, then due to water lodging in the agricultural field, so the field get submerged, right? So the fertile area will get submerged, right? But what happens in the coastal areas? In the coastal areas, when the floods are there, so this coastal area will always have the floods, and this water which is entering into the coastal agriculture field is saline water. So here we find saline water enters there, and the saline water decreases the fertility of the soil. So two things happens in the coastal areas. One is that the saline water will make the submergence, and second one is this salinity will decrease the fertility of soil. This salinity will decrease the fertility of soil in the coastal areas, right? Then loss of life and property. Whenever floods are there, we have major issues associated with the animals, domesticated animals, wild animals, and the street animals. So there will be large amount of loss of life, more specifically with the animals, where we talk about the domestic animals, wild animals, coastal areas. Like if there is a floods in the Kaziranga Park, then there will be a problem with the animals which are inhabited in that. In the national park, inhabited. Sanctuaries, the animals will be affected by that. They become very difficult to survive when the water level increases. So wild animals are affected by the impact of the floods. And also the street animals, the stray dogs, etc. And apart from that, there is large amount of loss of the properties when the water enters into the industrial areas. So along with the animals, we also find human losses are there. Right? Then physical infrastructures are damaged. So here we are talking about the industries, or it can be the roads, or it can be railways, or sometimes when the water enters into the airport areas also. So we can say that some losses can be seen. Then it becomes very difficult for displacement, resettlement, and rehabilitation. Displacement means taking the people from one area to another area in the safe location. And resettlement means providing them home. And rehabilitation means providing them livelihood. Providing them livelihood. Right? So it is not easy to provide livelihood. It is not easy to provide the livelihood for the displaced person. Livelihood in the sense about job opportunities. So generally the people who are displaced from the forest regions, so they are not having much education which is being done to them. So they may not be having the skills. So they are more equipped with agriculture activities. So they need to be provided with agriculture land wherever they are displaced. So that part where you provide them agriculture land or any type of source of income to them, we refer that as livelihood, or we refer them as rehabilitation. That is source of income. Then disease. So when the floods are there, the water becomes stagnant. When the water becomes stagnant in that areas, stagnant, so we find many dead animals, or sometimes mosquitoes, etc. So they all creates vector-borne disease. They all create vector-borne disease. And many such disease which have been seen due to the carcasses which are seen in the areas where it is flooded, right? Then environmental impacts will be there. So when huge amount of water enters there, we always find the submergence area will not be vulnerable in the context of productivity. And in the coastal areas also we find impacts will be there. It may be drinking water, it may be about the air which is being breathed there. So we find large amount of impacts will be seen in the context of the floods, right? Vector borne means the disease which spreads by biting of mosquito and other parts, right? Then urban flood management. So how the urban flood management is done? So coordinating with all the agencies. Now which agencies we are talking? So whenever urban flood management is done, there should be a coordination between the police organization. There should be a coordination between army personnels, or we say defense, right? Or military. Or there should be a coordination between the medical persons, the doctors, right? So when we talk about that, forces, armed forces, departments and all, then there will be a proper channelization of the rescue operation. So this will help in proper channelization of rescue operation, and medication. Then forecasting, awareness and communication. Forecasting is early warning system. So when we talk about this forecasting, awareness and communication, it is referred as an important aspect of early warning system. Early warning system, that is good aspect of pre-disaster management. Pre-disaster management, right? That is risk management. So when the forecasting is done at time or intervals, then it will help them to make arrangement in the context of the event there. Then mapping of urban areas. So when the mapping is done, by mapping the areas, you can identify that which areas are vulnerable and where the avoidance has to be done. So it is to identify the vulnerability of the urban areas. And once you know that this area is always having the issues, then you can regulate the settlements there. Regulate the settlements, or you can restrict the settlements in that areas. You can say them, don't use that area for settlements, right? Then pre-monsoon desiltation. Generally in the context of India, June, July, August and September is southwest monsoon, where we find the western part of India and central and part of northeast receives heavy rainfall. But in the northeast monsoon, Tamil Nadu and the east coast receives rainfall. Now, during rainy season, large amount of water enters into the drainage systems. And in the urban areas, we find these drainage, they all are filled with the debris. They are filled with the plastics. And remember, these plastics are not degradable. And that is the reason why the debris, plastics, which are seen in the urban drainage, they will make the drainage shallow. And during the rainy season, there is more possibility that the water spilling takes place. So hence, you should clean the debris. It means the department should take care that the desiltation has to be done there. So removing of these, removing of the debris, we refer that as desiltation. And this should be done before the onset of monsoon, that is pre-monsoon, before monsoon. Before monsoon, right? Then proper infrastructure should be there. This infrastructure, when we say, generally the infrastructure should be such that they should have a proper drainage facilities, they should have proper amount of water soaking capacities, and they should have the ecological friend, or we say eco-friendly constructions has to be done. So generally we say the building codes has to be maintained in that areas, right? Then portable pumps, small pumps should be there. And these small pumps, they can pump out the water where the large amount of accumulation of waters are there. Generally, wherever we find large amount of the enclaves, the flats are there. So from there, the pumping of water can be done, or pumping out of water can be done by using the small portable pumps, right? So it is pumping out of water. Then chlorinated or boiled water and clean safe food, because these are the emergency things during the flood. When the area is flooded with the water, we always find that it is a contaminated one, and there is a problem with the safe food, safe drinking water, or clean drinking water which is required. And hence, as a precautionary measure, they should be chlorinated, and safe food should be reached to the people who are affected by the flood regions. Then insecticides should be sprinkled in the stagnant water, so that the vector-borne disease should not be making its contaminated, and it should not be moving from one person to another part. Then emergency services like medications and other aspects, rescue and rehabilitation should be done, which is a part of the post disaster management, right? Post disaster management, right? Okay, PDM means pre disaster management. Pre disaster management. Okay. Vulnerability means, Ashay, vulnerability is, it is a degree of resistance to the impact of hazard, or we say it is inability of a person, society, or ecosystem to handle the situation effectively. We refer that as vulnerability. Very simply, it is a resistance to the impact of the hazard. Okay, so vulnerability, right? Permeability and non-permeability. Understand this. If this is a rock, when there is a water which is falling there, if it allows the water to move downward, that is called as permeability. When it allows the water to move, we refer that as permeability, right? Sometimes we find the rocks are there where the rock will not allow the water to percolate downward. We refer them as non-permeable rocks or non-permeability. Non-permeability, right? Then flood forecasting in India. Now, when we talk about flood forecasting in India, remember that how it is done. In the first case, it is observation, right? So when we talk about that, observation and collection, observation and collection of data from hydrological. Hydrological means rain data, and hydrometeorological data. hydrometeorological data. Now, once the data is collected, it is transferred, it is given, it is transferred to the agencies which take care of the urban floods, and then it is transferred to the forecasting center. Forecasting center. Now, this forecasting center, it make analysis of all the datas. It make analysis, and after analyzing, it prepare a forecast. Analyze and prepare forecast. And this forecast, which is prepared by the forecasting center, is disseminated to the people. It is disseminated. Disseminated means transferred to the people. So this is how the flood forecasting is done in India. They will accumulate the data. It is transferred to the forecasting center. And from the forecasting center, when they prepare the forecast, it is disseminated to the people on timely basis. Right. So it is done by Central Water Commission. And generally, when they give the data, so if they say that the water level is at low flood, then they will give yellow orange, right? And if it is very high, highest flood level, then they will give red alert in the context. Now, these are the color codes which are given in the flood prone areas in the urban part, right? So moderate flood, it will be yellow color. High flood, it will be orange color. And unprecedented heavy rainfall beyond the level which has been recorded previous time, then we refer that as red alert. So yellow alerts, orange alerts, and red alerts in the context of floods. Right. Okay. Now, flood disaster management. One is the same thing what we have covered. It is just a nutshell of that. One is risk analysis, which is pre-disaster management, analyzing of that. I told in the initial class that the principle of risk management in the disaster is to identify the risk, analyze the risk, and based on that, you have to apply the strategies. That's what the first class I told about the risk. So please revise those. What is risk? What is vulnerability? If you revise them, the same things are applied in these cut. Right. Then flood forecasting, early warning system, then reducing the runoff. So when the water is moving on the surface of the areas, surface there, you should make sure that it is to be reduced by making the water to percolate downward, that is absorbing the water, right? Or making proper sinkages, right? Or what we say, make the water to percolate downward. Percolate downward, right? And then flood diversion, divert the water to different areas so that the impact is reduced. So if this is the channel of water, you divert that to different areas so that its impact is reduced. Right? Then construction of embankments. Embankments means if this is a river which is flowing, right? Now these are the bank areas of the rivers. Now when the river is flowing, it will have a bank on both the sides. Now there are two ways of creating or increasing the height of the bank. One is a natural process. What is this natural process? When the floods are there in the rivers, so the water will spill outside, and whenever it is spilling outside, it will throw the debris on both the sides. We refer that as flood prone zone or flood zone. Apart from that, the debris will also deposit on the bank, which will increase the height of this bank. And this which is increased maybe 1 meter, 2 meter, deposition, due to deposition of the debris by river itself. We refer that as fluvial deposit. And generally, it is referred as natural levees that you have read in your geography. Natural levees. Which are referred as natural embankment. Natural embankment. So this is one way of increasing the height of the river, that is naturally. We refer that as natural levees or embankment. Second one is by doing engineering works, construction works, that is artificially using the iron rods or bricks which can resist the water of the river to flow outside. Engineering works by using the bricks, irons, etc. Idea is to increase the height of the river bank. We refer that as embankments. It can be natural or it can be artificial. So this is artificial. And we refer that as artificial embankment. Embankment, right? Then flood plain zoning. So the moment when you make the zoning map, then you can restrict the habitation in that area, or you can avoid the habitation in that area. Avoid habitation, right? Then conservation of natural buffers. So natural buffers means in the coastal areas we have mangroves, then large amount of the trees which are there in the neighborhood of the lakes. Generally we refer them as the trees or the forests in the areas, or sometimes the lakes and the ponds, where we find large amount of greeneries which can resist the flow of water. Then risk transfer, that is insurance. Then integrated watershed management. I'll discuss that when I take up drought. I'll explain that what is integrated watershed management. So watershed means where the water is collected, right? Apart from that, post disaster management, we refer that as the crisis, that is resettlement, rehabilitation. Resettlement and rehabilitation, right? So this is what we can see in the context of the flood disaster management, right? Now this is the artificial embankment, this is natural levees. Natural levees or natural embankment. So when the river is flowing outside, so it will deposit. So this is the deposit which is done by the river, fluvial deposits on both the banks, right? And this which is deposited is referred as the natural levees here. Natural levees, and on that large amount of vegetation grows. So this is what we are talking about, maintaining the natural levees, right? Apart from that, in the context of urban flood management, we come across these terms when we say reducing runoff, constructions and all. We always talk about a concept which has been introduced in the urban flood management, generally referred as sponge city concept. Sponge city concept, right? Now what is this sponge city concept? Okay, what is this sponge city concept? So the moment when you see sponge city concept, which was introduced in China, and it has been a very good model in the context of urban. So here in the sponge city, the first thing is the urban infrastructures are so made that the natural sinks are destroyed. We created a concrete jungles in the urban areas. So during the heavy rainfall, water will not percolate downward. So hence, in the sponge city, the first approach is to create permeable asphaltation or permeable concretes. Permeable asphaltation or permeable concretes. Idea is the water should move downward. The water should percolate downward. Right. Second thing is, second thing is plant large amount of trees there. Right. Afforestation. Afforestation. And third, linking of the water bodies. Linking of the water bodies, generally the lakes. Interlink them so that excess water do not move. So permeable asphaltation, natural sinks are created. Natural sinks are created where it will store the water and it will make the drainage downward. So we refer that as sponge city concept. Now in India, as a pilot basis, it has to be, or it is decided to implement in the Ahmedabad. Right. On the pilot basis. On the pilot basis. Now what are the characteristics of this which we are implementing in Ahmedabad? The first one is they are planning to create an eco block storm water management. Eco block storm water management. Right. And second thing is along with eco block storm water management, it is about infiltration tank. Infiltration tank. And the third aspect of the pilot project is where we talk about interlinking of the lakes. Interlinking of the lakes. And the fourth component is real-time flood monitoring. Real-time flood monitoring. Right. Now, what is this eco block and what are its advantages? So the moment when we say it is eco block stormwater management, so these eco block stormwater management, they are easy to install. They have more life and they can store more water. They can store more water. Right. And when we talk about infiltration tanks, so what is the role of infiltration tanks, which is proposed in this project? Infiltration tanks is, it is a controlled drainage of rainwater. Controlled drainage of rainwater, which can percolate downward. That is to the groundwater. So it is controlled drainage of rainwater into groundwater. And real-time flood monitoring will help them to prepare themselves in the very short period of time. And interlinking of the rivers will not make excess water flowing to the neighboring areas. Right. So this is where we are making a model approach or pilot basis in the Ahmedabad to apply this sponge city concept. And it is supported by National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA. right? See, I have explained this eco block water management, right? And apart from that, this eco block will have low maintenance. Apart from that, it will have low maintenance. Low maintenance. See, how can we restrict settlement in the floodplain areas? Restriction means regulations can be given by the authorities, and they can warn the people that this is an area where during the rainy season the water level reaches to up the region, and it is very, very dangerous to construct the house in that area. So you can make a restriction, you can give the warning to the people. And apart from that, in spite of warning, if they construct, then nothing can be done to that, right? So that's where we say that strong regulations has to be done in the areas, right? Okay. So we'll discuss why tsunami and all are included in other part, but focus on this thing, right? So definition of the floods and whatever I have explained is given here. So flood is a submergence of new area or increase in the water level in the any submerged areas, already submerged areas, right? Now we'll move on to a concept called as drought. Right. Now, what is drought and what are the things you should remember in the context of drought? It is a condition of dryness due to shortage or lack of water over extended period of a time. It is a temporary shortage of water. It is temporary shortage of water for a longer period of a time. Right. We refer that as a drought. Many reasons are given for that. Maybe rainfall, maybe excess utilization, but there will be a shortage or lack of water extended for a longer period of a time. So there are many indices to measure that. There are many parameters to measure that. Among all that, the most widely used parameter or most widely used index is Palmer Drought Severity Index, PDSI. Palmer Drought Severity Index. I'm repeating, there are many indices to measure the severity of the droughts, but the most one or most familiar is PDSI, Palmer Drought Severity Index. And this PDSI has the scale which is +6 to -6. It is having a scale +6 to -6. +6 means the area which is having heavy rainfall or wet area, and -6 means dry area. So on the scale they measure, if it is -5, -6, it means the area is experiencing severe drought. If it is +6, the area is experiencing heavy floods. If it is somewhere in between that, so it may be less moderate or it can be comparatively lower in the context of severity there. So the scale is +6 to -6. Now the moment when we say drought, the term drought is very complex. The term drought is very complex. Why? Because we don't have any single parameter to gauge the droughts. No single parameter. No single parameter to gauge the drought. Then second thing is, we don't know or we can't find exact date when the drought has started. So we can't find exact date when the drought was started. And the third thing is, you can't demarcate exactly the areas of the droughts. You can't demarcate. You can't demarcate exact areas of drought. Right. So hence, It is very complex, even though the name is very simple, but we always find that it is a complex phenomenon to be known, because in the worldwide we don't have single parameter. US may be having different parameter, India is having its own parameter, right? So every country will be having their own parameters, so no uniformity in the parameters. There are different ways in which it is being seen. Then we don't find exact date when it was started or when it is started, and we can't demarcate the area. So hence we say it is drought prone region. So hence we say it is drought prone region. And I told that, drought prone region means any area which is homogeneous in the characteristics, right? See, permeable asphalt means asphaltation which is done in the urban infrastructures. If it allows the water to percolate downward, we refer that as permeability. See, in geography, while reading the rocks stratas, you have studied that permeable rocks and non-permeable rocks. So permeable rocks are those rocks which allow the water to percolate downward, and non-permeable rocks are those rocks which will not allow the water to move downward or pass through them. So two important characteristics of the rocks you have studied: one is permeability and one is porosity. Porosity means water holding capacity. Permeability means which will allow the water to pass through. I'm talking about permeability, right? Okay. Now, in the context of India, when we talk about the drought prone areas, so the drought prone areas in the India can be classified into three ways. It is classified into three ways or three zones. The first zone is the triangular area from Jalandhar of Punjab, Ahmedabad in Gujarat, and up to Kanpur. Right? This is area. So the first area is the triangular area between the Jalandhar, Ahmedabad, and Kanpur. The second area is, here we find the Western Ghats, and windward and leeward part of the Western Ghats. So these are called as the leeward sides, rain shadow region. So that is the second prone areas, leeward side of Western Ghats. Right? So always remember windward and leeward. Windward will receive heavy rainfall and leeward will not have much rainfall. Generally, we refer that as rain shadow area. Right? And the third one is isolated areas of that, right? The third one is patches of isolated area. Like any district which is experiencing the drought here. Gujarat was drought due to lack of monsoon. Yes, we say that it is mainly one reason, and apart from that, many reasons will be linked to that. So one reason may be main, but apart from that, we find a few more can be seen. So Gujarat, monsoon is one reason. Apart from that, overutilization of groundwater, overutilization or over exploitation of groundwater, you can say. So when there is no rainfall, percolation of water will not be there. So many reasons will contribute to the droughts. We'll discuss that later. So first understand the drought prone areas of India. So according to National Disaster Management Authority, the drought prone areas of India are defined as, one is the triangle area, then the leeward region of Western Ghats, and isolated patches like Coimbatore, Purulia, where the monsoon has not provided the normal precipitation. Right? So these are referred as the drought prone areas. Right? Okay. Now, types of droughts. In the context of India, Indian Meteorological Department classifies the droughts in India into different categories. into different categories, and they are: the first one is referred as meteorological drought. Meteorological drought. Now, this meteorological drought is, see, the third one is isolated patches. Patches of isolated areas where the monsoon has not provided normal rainfall. It can be the districts like Coimbatore, Purulia districts, or any districts of any states where the monsoon has not provided normal rainfall. They changes from one year to another year, right? Meteorological drought. So meteorological drought is associated with when you calculate the drought based on precipitation. It is based on precipitation, rainfall. Now, any area, any geographical area, if it receives 25% less rainfall, 25% less rainfall than long period average. Understand this. If any geographical area, it may be Karnataka, it may be Maharashtra, or it may be any state or any district, if it receives 25% less than long period average. So this long period average data will be there with the concerned authorities. If it is receiving 25% less than long period average, then that area is said to be affected by the drought. Right. So that area is affected by the drought. So here meteorological means we are talking about the rain of that particular year. And if there is rainfall, if it is less than 25% to 50% of long period average, if the rainfall, if it is less than 25% to 50% of long period average, then we refer that as moderate drought. Moderate drought. And if the rainfall is less than 50% of long period average, then we refer that as severe drought. Severe drought, right? So a drought which is defined on the basis of precipitation pattern, we refer that as a meteorological drought. 25% less than long period average are generally referred as droughts. And if it is 25% to 50% less than long period average, we refer that as moderate drought. If it is less than 50% of the long period average, then we refer them as severe drought. The second type of drought is referred as hydrological drought. Hydrological drought. And this hydrological drought is on the basis of water table. It is classified, or it is defined on the basis of water table. So what is water table? Water table is an upper layer of saturated on the groundwater, in the groundwater. So if you see this as a groundwater, this is the surface of an earth, and here we are having groundwater. Right, and this is the surface of groundwater, surface of saturated zone of groundwater. And this upper portion, this upper layer of the saturated zone of groundwater, we refer this as water table. We refer that as water table. So whenever over exploitation of groundwater is there, water table will fall downward. So during over exploitation, this water table will fall downward. When we recharge the groundwater, when we do rainwater harvesting, then the water table increases. then the water table increases during recharge and water harvesting. Now, based on this water table, the drought which is declared, we refer that as hydrological drought. Now, hydrological drought happens when the water table falls to great depth. When the water table falls to great depth. Now, when the water table falls to the great depth, bore wells will become dry, normal wells will also become dry. So there will be always a shortage of water. So when the water table falls down, there will always be a shortage of water for livestock and human consumption. Human consumption. We refer that as hydrological drought. That is based on the water table. Then third one is agricultural drought. Agricultural drought. What is agricultural drought? It is defined when there is not much of moisture is available in the soil. It is defined when there is not much moisture in the soil, or along with that there is no water. So when there is shortage of water or no moisture in the soils, then it will affect the standing crops. Standing crops are destroyed, right? And we refer that as the agricultural drought, right? So meteorological drought, hydrological drought, and agricultural drought, right? And then the fourth one is socioeconomic drought. Socioeconomic drought, right? Now, how to define a socioeconomic drought? Socioeconomic drought when there is abnormal shortage of water. Abnormal shortage of water, right? And entire fabric of the society is affected. Rich, poor, everybody is affected. Entire fabric is affected. Entire fabric of society is affected. Third, there will be shortage of food grains. Generally, we say famine-like condition. Shortage of food grains. And during this socioeconomic drought, large amount of health hazards will be seen. Disease and health hazards will be there. Right. And when there is no water, when there is no opportunities for employment, so people migrate from rural area to urban areas. So socioeconomic drought will lead to migration of the people. A severest type of the drought, which is experienced or which is seen in the context of India's disaster management. Now, linkage is, if any area do not have rainfall for 3 to 4 years, then meteorological drought will lead to hydrological drought. Meteorological drought will lead to hydrological drought. Now, again, over a period of a time, the area is not having any rainfall and the water table has also fallen down. That's why the combined effect of meteorological drought and hydrological drought will lead to the third type of drought called as agricultural drought. Understand? Meteorological drought can link to hydrological drought. Meteorological and hydrological drought, if they are seen, both can lead to the agricultural drought, where there is no availability of water and the moisture is also dry. That is agricultural drought. And no rainfall, groundwater table has also fallen down, agriculture is also destroyed, so no employment opportunities and health hazards are stronger, and that is where we refer that as the socio-economic drought. So all the three combinedly can trigger what we refer that as socio-economic drought. Clear? Economic drought, right? So remember, meteorological drought leads to hydrological drought. 1 and 2 can lead to 3. See, 1 can lead to 2. 1 and 2 can lead to 3. 1, 2, and 3 combinedly lead to the fourth type of drought. Simple as it is. Is it clear? Okay. Now, next perspective is, I have given you here what is meteorological drought, what is agricultural drought, and what is the socio-economic. Please go through that. Again, I'm repeating. If the drought is explained on the basis of shortage of rainfall, we refer that as meteorological. If it is based on water table, hydrological. If it is based on soil moisture, it is referred as agriculture drought. And if it is of a very severe nature, where there is shortage of food grains and health hazards started to increase in that region, we refer that as socio-economic drought. Right? Then the factors which makes more susceptible in the context of India, why the droughts are more in India. This is linked with your current affairs and also why part. Right. The first one is, in the context of India, we always see that the rainfall pattern is monsoon. Right. So generally, when we say monsoon, you should remember points of that monsoon. Sometimes the monsoon enters into India delay. So there is delay in the entry and delay in entry of monsoon. Sometimes it withdraws early. It withdraws early. And third thing is, there may be break when the monsoon starts. We refer that as monsoon breaks. 3 to 10 days, there will be no rainfall. Monsoon break. Right. So all these will affect the water availability in the India. So hence we say there is yearly, seasonal and regional variation in the rainfall in spite of high average rainfall in India. Now, if you depend on the data, the average rainfall in India, according to the data, it is 118 centimeters. Average rainfall in India is 118 centimeters. And most of the rainfall is during southwest monsoon. Most of the rainfall is during southwest monsoon. Right. So hence, if there is any variation in the southwest monsoon, that is early withdrawal or delay in the entry, then it will affect the total average rainfall of India. Average rainfall of India. And monsoon rainfall always varies from place to place and timely factor because of the impact of climate change and global warming. Because of global warming and climate change, we find there has been a variation in the pattern of monsoon. Then a short span of fewer than 100 days during the southwest monsoon. Generally, remember that the southwest monsoon is where we find it is June, July, August, and September. And hence, sometimes the southwest monsoon is also referred as 100 days rainfall. The southwest monsoon is referred as 100 days rainfall. 100 days rainfall. And hence, if there is shortage or if there is a rainfall which is having a very fewer span, it will have an impact. It will have an impact. Right. So there will be always a drought period which will extend if the span of the rainfall decreases. And this we have already seen in the context of monsoon. So the rainfall, the area which was receiving for 15 days or 20 days, now the same amount of rainfall it is receiving in 10 days or 5 days. I'm repeating. If any area A, if it was receiving the amount of rainfall, it was receiving the amount of rainfall, say around 10 to 15 days. 10 to 15 days. Now the same amount of rainfall, it is receiving in 5 days. 5 days. So this is called as variation in the pattern of rainfall. So the pattern of rainfall have been changed. So it means that only 5 days it will be having heavy rainfall, and remaining 10 days there will be shortage of water. This is what the patterns have been changed due to the impact of the global warming. Right. Then over exploitation of groundwater resources. Generally, we see that in certain states like Punjab and Haryana. In Punjab and Haryana. Right. So there over exploitation is done for the rice crop. And hence the Punjab and Haryana receives less rainfall, but over exploitation will always have the shortage of groundwater. Then steady decline in per capita availability for humans as the population is increasing. Animals are also increasing. So due to the increasing in the population, so the per capita availability of water is being done. And apart from that, the aquifers are also not of good quality. The aquifers are also deteriorating. Aquifers are deteriorating. Aquifer means the water which can be stored in the ground water. Aquifer can be rocks or it can be alluvial soil. Where the water, saturated water is stored, we refer that as aquifers. So poor quality of aquifers, or the aquifers are deteriorating where they're unable to hold more groundwater. Right. Rapid urbanization, deforestation, which is leading to erratic rainfall pattern. Some days you get heavy rainfall and 1 month you don't have any rainfall. That was seen in the month of August last year, right? So we find erratic part. Then limited irrigation coverages. We don't have proper irrigation. If you see the irrigation intensity in India, it is very less. Irrigation intensity in India is very less. Irrigation intensity is very less. In fact, it is less than 50%. Right? It is less than 50% or less. Right. Then we find faulty cropping patterns. Faulty cropping patterns means if you see the Punjab and Haryana will receive very small amount of rainfall. So hence the areas should have those crops which are less water intensive. Rice is a crop of coastal area where it needs more water and often irrigation. Now, rice is a natural crop of coastal areas or the area where heavy rainfalls are there. But the western disturbances in Punjab and Haryana will not bring more rainfall. And this rice, which was introduced in the Punjab and Haryana during the Green Revolution, is not the suitable crop there. And that is why during the sowing of the rice and after that, they always make over irrigation. And this rice, which is not the natural crop of that Punjab area where there is less rainfall, we refer that as the faulty cropping patterns. Fault cropping patterns. Rice in Punjab is such example. Rice in Punjab is such example. Is it clear? Okay. So these are the things which makes the droughts more vulnerable in the context of India. Right. Then what is the impact of global warming and drought in India? Relationship between global warming and drought in India. Now, here you should remember certain aspects. Global warming means we talk about the occurrence which takes place in the Pacific Ocean called as El Nino and La Nina, right? So it is the activities which takes place in the Pacific Ocean due to the sudden increase in the temperature there. Generally, we refer that as El Nino. El Nino. So when there is an El Nino in the Pacific Ocean, it will always affect the precipitation pattern in India, right? It will always affect. So there will be a shortage of water. So this year we are experiencing El Nino. So El Nino in the year 2024, where the rainfall patterns have been affected. So this generally reduces rainfall in India. I'm only talking about India here, concerned to India. So during El Nino, we find the rainfall pattern is affected. But there is one more factor you should remember, that sometimes when there is an El Nino in the Pacific Ocean, we also have the Indian Ocean dipole. This you are studied in geography, right? So if there is a positive Indian Ocean dipole in the Indian Ocean, so this will counter the effect of El Nino. Right? So when there is a strong Indian Ocean dipole, so it can counter the effect of El Nino. That means that the impact of El Nino is nullified by the positive Indian Ocean dipole. So hence we say that not all the droughts in India are linked with El Nino. So hence we say that not all the droughts in India are linked with El Nino, because positive Indian Ocean dipole can nullify the impact of El Nino. So this is one point you should remember. Second point is that if there is El Nino in the Pacific Ocean, and at the same time the Indian Ocean is having negative Indian Ocean dipole, that is Arabian Sea becomes much more colder here. It will develop high pressure, and this will make the worst condition. It will make the conditions very worst. And during this phase, India will have worst drought or extreme drought-like condition. Right. So this is one aspect of the impact of global warming and climate change. Second one is, when we are reading the oceans, we come across a term called as marine heat waves. Right. Now, what are marine heat waves? Marine heat waves means abnormal increase of the surface of ocean water temporarily. Marine heat waves means abnormal increase of temperature of the ocean water temporarily for a shorter period of a time, you say. So we refer that as marine heat waves. Many reasons are there. Maybe due to salinity factor changes or the wind factors which affects that. So here I'm just defining the definition. Marine heat waves, abnormal increase of the temperature in the ocean areas. And you should remember that in climatology, there is an inverse relationship between temperature and pressure. Higher the temperature, lower will be the pressure, right? And lower is the temperature, higher will be the pressure. So we always know that temperature is inversely proportional to pressure, right? Now, when the marine heat waves are developed during monsoon season, if the marine heat waves are developed in the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, what will happen? So if this is India, right? Now here the marine heat waves are developed. Marine heat waves are developed in the Arabian Sea, right? And marine heat waves are developed in Bay of Bengal. Marine heat waves means temperature which is higher, and because of that this patch of an ocean will have low pressure and this will have low pressure. Now during the southwest monsoon, the monsoon winds which reaches to the India, now because of the marine heat waves, a part of a wind will divert towards this, and the part of the southwest monsoon winds, they will move along the coastal areas and they will reach to this region. So the central portion will have drought like condition. So the central portion will have drought like condition. Drought like condition. And this we have experienced in the year 2022. In the year 2022, where we had heavy rainfall in the coastal areas. Coastal areas will have more rainfall. More precipitation. But the drought will be there in this portion. So we refer that as the impact of marine heat waves, right? So these all are the aspects of global warming and droughts in the context of India, right? Now, impact of the droughts. We always find that impact of the droughts are there, which are referred as environmental impacts. Environmental impacts means it will make the drying of the vegetation, and that vegetation, when it becomes dry, so it becomes vulnerable for forest fires. It become vulnerable for forest fires. And when there is no rainfall, then the wetlands will become dry. Wetlands, that is lakes, ponds, etc., they will become dry, right? And this will affect the carrying capacity of ecosystem. It will affect the carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is affected. Now, what do you mean by carrying capacity? Carrying capacity means it is the services which are provided by the ecosystem when it is having all the conditions which are healthy part. So if any ecosystem is having good capacities, if it is in the good state of its kind, then it will provide better services. Better services. Now, which type of services we are talking? Drinking water, food, right? Or medicinal parts, fresh air. All these we refer them as services, the benefits what we get from ecosystem. Now remember, in ecology and environment, you have studied that a pond is an ecosystem, forest is an ecosystem, agriculture is man-made ecosystem, right? So the benefits what we get from the ecosystem, we refer them as ecosystem services. So when the ecosystem itself is degraded, then we can't get the services, and that services are very, very vital in the context of humanity, right? So environmental impacts can be seen whenever the droughts become very severe. Then economic impacts, it will affect the food grains, employment opportunities in the agricultural field, and in turn they are raw material for the industries. So primary sectors will affect secondary sectors there, because the agricultural areas, they provides raw materials to agro based industries, they will be affected. And when the crops are destroyed, farmers will not have much finance or money left with them. And it will also have a social impact like migration. So when it is socio-economic drought, we always find they move from one region to another region for the need of employment opportunities and all. Right. So we refer that as socio-economic impact. So the impacts of drought are environmental, economic, and social, like migrations will be there, and sometimes clashes will also occur due to shortage of waters there. Right. Withdrawing of the children from the school, all these are referred as the impact of the droughts. Right. Now, before moving down to the impact of the drought, right, so there are certain terms which you should understand, in the context of the drought with reference to India. Right. The first one is, in the last 50 years, in the last 50 years, India has experienced drought every third year. India has experienced drought. Sorry, India has experienced drought once in 3 years. That means every third year was drought in the last 50 years. The second one is, whenever drought-like conditions are there, large amount of GDP is lost. So 2% to 5% of GDP is lost due to impact of drought. Right. So we always lose large amount of the money, maybe for maintenance or maybe for providing assistance to the communities. Right. Then, in the context of India, the state declares drought. And the state declares drought, keeping the drought manual 2016 at present. Keeping, or based on parameters of drought manual of 2016. So state declares the drought. And who is monitoring authority? Who monitors the drought in India? It is monitored by Indian Meteorological Department. Monitored by Indian Meteorological Department, IMD. Indian Meteorological Department. Right. Apart from that, we also come across terms which are there in the news. Like the term called as ecological drought, which is in current affairs. Ecological drought. Right. So what are ecological droughts? So ecological droughts are the droughts where the impact of drought are felt in ecosystem. Impact of the drought which affects the ecosystem. We refer that as ecological drought. Now, what effects we are talking? So whenever drought-like conditions are there, in the ecosystem, there will be a shortage of water in the ecosystem, more specifically the lakes, ponds, etc. So there will be shortage of water in the lakes, ponds, etc. So when there is a shortage of water, or ultimately when the water bodies becomes dry, ultimately when they become dry, so that will lead to very severe shortage of water for the animals, and which can lead to death of many animals there. It can be wild animals or domesticated animals, which leads to death of animals. Death of animals there. Then whenever the ecosystem is degraded due to drought, when it is degraded, then it will not provide the services what it is to be given. So it will affect the services of ecosystem. Services are affected. Like food shortage will be there, crops will be dried, fodder will not be there for animals, clean air will not be there. So these basic services which the ecosystem provides will be hampered. And apart from that, when the drought is seen in the ecosystem, the forest area become dry, the vegetation become dry. So two things happens in that. One, there will be shortage of fodder for the animals, and sometimes the dry vegetation can make forest fire vulnerable. I'm repeating. So this can create shortage of fodder for the animals, or it can create the forest fire because of dry vegetation. Now, in both the cases, wild animals leave the forest area and enter into the settlements. So in both the cases, wild animals, they leave their areas and they enter into settlements for the search of food and search of water. They enter into the settlements. Why? For the search of food and for the search of water. Right. So when they enter into these areas, so they will always create man-animal conflict, which leads to man-animal conflict. Man-animal conflict. And hence, this man-animal conflict is one of the strong reason for loss of biodiversities. So hence, this ecological drought is in the news, because India is apart from having the socio-economic drought, it is also moving towards large areas where ecological droughts are there, where the wild animals are leaving their habitation and entering into the habitat areas of the people settlements, where there will be a clashes between wild animals and the human beings. So there is possibility that domesticated animals, human beings can be killed, and in turn the wild animals can also be killed, which can create a large amount of loss of biodiversity and socio-economic losses. When the elephants enter into agricultural fields, losses will be there, socio-economic losses will be there. And I hope you have read about the man-animal conflict in the context of your ecology and environment. See, in the flood cases as well, yes, it can be in the flood cases as well. So GDP loss will be there. This is, I'm talking about the reports which were given for your current affairs. There will be loss in the context of floods as well, right? Ecological drought, remember this. Apart from that, we also come across a term which is called as flash droughts. Flash droughts. Right. So you have heard about flash floods. Now, flash droughts are also there. Now, what are flash droughts? Flash droughts are generally, it is rapid onset of the drought, or it is intensification of the droughts, intensifying of normal drought. We refer that as flash droughts. So conventional droughts, they take years together, 1 year, 2 years, and then slowly they spread to the regions. So they are very slow in spreading. They are the conventional droughts. So when the drought spreads very fast for a shorter period of a time, maybe, we refer them as flash droughts. Now, the moment when we say flash droughts, you should remember that these flash droughts, they can be formed or they can be because of many reasons. One reason is that due to severe shortage of rainfall, severe shortage of rainfall, shortage of precipitation. Then second reason is that high temperature and high velocity winds there. High temperature, high velocity of winds, and more radiations, high radiations. So radiation means I'm talking about insolation or incoming solar radiation. So high temperature, high velocity of the winds, and high radiation. Now what happens when there is a shortage of rainfall and high temperature is there? So these conditions, high temperature, high velocity of winds, and large amount of radiations, it will increase evaporation and transpiration. So it will increase evapotranspiration. It will increase evapotranspiration. Transpiration. So the moment when there is large amount of water is lost in the form of evaporation and transpiration, so that area will have a severe shortage of water in a very short period of a time. And such types of droughts, we refer them as flash droughts, right? So we refer them as flash droughts. So in India, generally the flash droughts, we can see them in the northeastern part of India and the Himalayan regions. So generally we find them in the northeastern parts of India and the Himalayan parts. Himalayas part. Now you should not surprise if the flash droughts occurs in the peninsular region due to the impact of global warming and climate change. Due to the impact of global warming and climate change. So ecological drought and flash drought, right? And last point about this is, I had told something about the drought manual. I told something about the drought manual. Drought manual. Right. Now, India introduced the drought manual for the first time in the year 2009. So, India introduced the drought manual, in the year 2006. First drought manual was introduced in the year 2006. Right. 2009, apologies. In the year 2009. So the first drought manual was introduced in the year 2009. Right. And this drought manual was used by the state government to declare the drought. Right. And here you should remember that this drought manual of 2009 was not scientific. It was not scientific. Not scientific. And according to the drought manual of 2009, the droughts in India were classified into three categories. That is normal drought, moderate drought, and third one is severe drought. Another 5 minutes, then we can have a break. So normal drought, moderate drought, and severe drought as per the drought manual of 2009. And in all the cases, central fund was available for the drought mitigation. So center provided financial assistance for all three types. According to the drought manual of 2009. Then as it was continued, then when there was an evaluation of this drought and manual was seen, Supreme Court identified that there were large amount of irregularities were there. irregularities in the 2009 drought manual. So it directed the center to make an arrangement and restructure the drought manual. And based on the suggestion of Supreme Court, based on the suggestion of Supreme Court, Center modified the drought manual of 2009 and it introduced the drought manual of 2016. And hence, drought manual of 2016 was introduced. And this drought manual of 2016, it replaced the 2009, which replaced the 2009 manual. Now, this manual is also having some type of issues. Contrasts are there. Now, according to the drought manual of 2016, now this drought manual is used to declare the droughts. The state government uses this. State governments uses the parameters which are defined in the drought manual of 2016 to declare droughts. To declare drought. And this drought manual of 2016 is more scientific. It is scientific. So hence, to declare the drought, it has to satisfy the conditions. To declare the drought, the state government should satisfy the conditions which are mentioned in the parameters of drought manual 2016. Apart from that, if you take this drought manual of 2016, so here you should remember that according to 2016 drought manual, now the droughts in India, they are classified into only two types. One is called as normal drought, and second one is called as severe drought. Severe drought. Now, the central assistance is given only when the state is able to declare as a severe drought. So only during severe drought, the central assistance is given. Central assistance, that is, central financial assistance is given only when the state is declaring that as a severe drought. Now, to declare the severe drought, it is very difficult for the state because all the parameters are scientific. So hence, the state government is finding more difficulty in declaring the severe drought. State government is finding difficulty in declaring the drought as severe because of scientific parameters where the instruments may not be there or the parameters may not be syncing with the state's paths. So hence, it has become very difficult for the state government to declare the severe droughts. And unless and until it is severe drought, center will not provide financial assistance to that. And that is the reason why many state governments have objected to the drought manual of 2016. Now, it does not mean that the state have no moderate droughts. There will be moderate droughts. It does not mean that the state do not have any type of moderate droughts. So there will be moderate, but who will take care of moderate droughts? Who will take care of moderate droughts? So in the context of moderate droughts, if it is moderate droughts, then the burden falls on the state government. So in the context of moderate drought, it has to the state government, which has to provide the amenities or reduce the impact of drought from its own exchequer. So hence, many state governments are opposing to the drought manual of 2016. Is it clear? So here, simple. Drought manuals were introduced in India in the year 2009, and the state governments declares the drought based on the manual. And this drought manual of 2009 declared the droughts in India into three categories: normal, moderate, and severe drought. And in all the three cases, the central assistance was given to the state governments. And these were not scientific in the nature. The parameters were not scientific. So it was easy for the state government to declare the droughts. But due to irregularities, it has been replaced by drought manual of 2016. And this 2016 drought manual is very scientific in nature. And apart from that, it declares droughts in India into two types: normal and severe drought. And the central assistance is given only when it is a severe drought, not in the normal, not in the moderate. And the state governments are finding it very, very difficult to declare the severe drought because of the scientific parameters which are there. And in the case of moderate droughts, it has to be provided by the state exchequer. It becomes, state governments feel that it is a burden in the context of state finance. So that is the reason why many states are opposing the drought manual of 2016. Like many states, Karnataka is there, and some areas, Kerala was there. So we find many states are opposing to the drought manual. So this is your current affairs with the drought. One is the aspects of the droughts, then two types of droughts: ecological drought and flash drought, and drought manual of 2016. Now this is basics plus your current affairs in the context of the droughts. So we can have a break and we'll join at 6:55. Yogita, watershed management, I'll take up. Don't worry. I'll just finish this and I'll take up watershed management. Done. Okay, welcome back after the break. Hope I'm audible to you all and visible as well, right? Northeastern part is affected by flash droughts. There we can see tropical evergreen forest. See, that's what I was telling you. It is affected by the flash drought means suddenly when there is lack of rainfall, no rainfall for 3 or 4 months, vegetation will become dry due to high rate of evaporation, high rate of transpiration. And for a shorter period of a time, there will be a severe shortage of water. And that type of droughts, we refer that as flash droughts. Due to, remember, you connect all the 3 points: shortage of rainfall and high temperature in the areas, right? Not low temperature, high temperature where we find it is having large amount of evaporation, right? Okay. Now, sometimes they may ask, write a note on flash droughts and why we find them because of the changing weather patterns and changing the climatic patterns there, right? High radiation means insolation. When there are no clouds, clouds have a good amount of albedo where they can reflect the radiation. So these radiations in the absence of cloud reaches to the earth and which can make more heating effect. These all are parts of your geography, right? Now, when we talk about drought risk management, always you should remember that the drought risk managements can be of two ways, that can be short-term and long-term measures. They can be short-term measures and long-term measures. Long-term measures. Now, what are in the short-term measure? Short-term measure is immediately when the state government declares a drought, then they should provide employment opportunities for the local people. So the moment when they declare the drought, then they will apply the scheme called as Manrega, 100 days employment guarantee in that area. So applying Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which will provide employment to the people, so that they will have certain amount of money with them. So immediately applying Manrega. Second, arranging drinking water arrangement, right? Third one is animals are the most affected, so arrange fodder for them, fodder arrangement, fodder arrangement. And fourth one will be, there will be a shortage of food grains, so strengthen the public distribution system, strengthen the public distribution system. Strengthening them so that there will not be a shortage of food grains, so that the drought will not convert that into famine like conditions. So these are short-term measures. Now the long-term measures are, here we talk about watershed management. Watershed management. So what is watershed? Any geographical area where the water is collected, and this collection of water can be through precipitation, that is rainfall, or it can be through the rivers, or it can be through melting of glacier, melting of ice or glacier. So any of these events where the water is accumulated, where the collection of water is done, we refer that as watershed. So water collected in any area, we refer that as watershed. And all the watersheds are classified on the basis of their sizes. They are classified on the basis of sizes. Like river basins, catchment areas, ponds, lakes, etc. So they all are classified on the basis of size. An example of these watersheds are ponds, lakes, etc. Right. So these are referred as watershed that you have read in your geography. Now, maintaining and managing them is referred as watershed management, so that they should not be affected by pollution. There should not be encroachment of these lakes. There should not be the construction activities which take place in that area. So we refer that as watershed management. Management of these lakes. Generally, restoring these sinks. Then second one is many programs and schemes taken by the governments. Programs and schemes which are taken by the governments. Right. So in the context of drought, short-term measures and long-term measures. So short-term, long-term. Now we'll try to understand the long-term measures, more specifically referred as the government programs and schemes. And in that, we talk about the integrated watershed management program, right? Integrated watershed management program. The program is integrated watershed management program. Right. Now, what is this integrated watershed management and how it got evolved? How it got evolved? Its evolution. Right. So generally, it is given by abbreviation Integrated Watershed Management Program, IWMP. Now, in the context of India, we always find the droughts are there, and we also find deserts are there. So deserts are permanent aridity. Deserts are permanently arid. Permanent arid. And droughts are temporary. Temporary. So deserts means Thar Desert or Ladakh Desert, warm desert or cold desert. So in the context of India, we always find a temporary conditions, which is drought, and permanent deficiency of water, that is desert. So hence, two programs were introduced to tackle this situation. And these program was, we refer them as drought prone area program, drought prone area program, referred as DPAP, and second program which was introduced along with that, we refer that as desert development program. Desert development program, DDP, desert development program. Now the major objectives of these program is water harvesting, along with water harvesting, shelter belting, that is afforestation, planting more trees. And apart from that, providing financial assistance to the farmers there. Financial assistance to the farmers. Assistance to farmers to purchase livestock resources. So what are livestock? Cattle, buffaloes, sheep, etc. Livestock like cattle, buffaloes, sheep, etc. So that they can have alternate source of income in the context of droughts. So they should not be having any type of issues when there is a crop failure or when there is no crop on their land areas. So this will give them alternate income source. And these are the two programs which were taken by the government in the context of drought areas and in the context of desert areas. Then the third program which was initiated along with that over a period of a time, we have large amount of wastelands in the panchayati areas or government areas. Large amount of wastelands were there. Wastelands were there. Barren lands, wastelands, barren lands or wastelands. Then government decided that why don't we use these wastelands, government wastelands, for watershed management. And that is where they introduced the third program called as Integrated Wasteland Management Program. They introduced the third program called as Integrated Wasteland Management Program. Now, the major objectives of the Integrated Wasteland Management Program was, the first thing is to increase the watershed in the rural areas, by constructing the lakes, by constructing the ponds, etc. And if you are aware about the current affairs, during the COVID, government implemented large schemes where they were used to dig more amount of lakes and ponds and cleaning the ponds or the lakes in the rural areas, so that they will get employment opportunities, and at the same time permanent assets can be constructed in the rural areas. And the best thing is it made them to stay in the rural areas rather than migrating to the urban part. So it is about creating a permanent assets like lakes and ponds, plus providing rural employment. Right. So here we find Integrated Wasteland Management Program was introduced. Drought prone, desert development, and integrated wasteland development programs were there. Then ultimately it continued, and we reached in a year called as 1992. So there, 1992, they found that these programs were implemented, but the results were not up to the mark. Expected results were not there. So hence, in the year 1992, all the three programs were merged. All these three programs were merged, and they were implemented with common guidelines. And the name given to that program, where the three programs were merged, where the A, B, and C were merged, and that program is referred as Integrated Watershed Management Program. New program was Integrated Watershed Management Program. With common guidelines, which was from 1993. Integrated Watershed Management Program, a program which was introduced by merging all the existing three programs. Then, to make it more stronger, to make it more accessibility, to make it more effective, we made some changes. And in the year 2002, this program, Integrated Watershed Management Program, was decentralized. It was decentralized. What is decentralized? Decentralized means that involving Panchayati Raj institution in watershed management. That is involving Panchayati Raj institution, that is local bodies in watershed management. And the name given to this is Haryali. Right. So if they ask question, what is Haryali? Haryali is an integrated watershed management program in India with decentralized approach, where the rural people or the local people were involved in that. And this was in the year 2008. Now, to make it more effective, from 2016, so 2016 onwards, so this integrated watershed management program, it is made as a part or component, it is made as a part or component of the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. It is made a component of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. Right. So remember this. So this is at present. So if they ask question, watershed management program in India is independent. No, it is a component of PMKSY, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. By involving that, by putting that in a component of PMKSY, it has been made more accountable. So this program has been made more accountable. Right. So this is called as evolution of watershed management program in India, or integrated watershed management. Right. So when we talk about this, please understand that integrated watershed management talks about the programs started from 1970s. The programs are drought prone area, desert development in 1970s. And 1980s is integrated wasteland development program. And all the three were merged in one program in the year 1993, called as integrated watershed management program. And in the year 2002, a decentralized approach was given to the same program through the involvement of Panchayati Raj institutions. And we named that as Haryali. And again, it was restructured. And at present, from 2015 and 16, according to the Niti Ayog's recommendation, this program is a part of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. So this is the long-term perspective in the context of India's integrated watershed management program. So if they ask any question, you should remember this point. Clear? Okay. Now, apart from that, all the programs I have mentioned here, what is a desert development program, what are drought prone area programs, all the features I have mentioned. So please read them along with the PPTs. That's sufficient in the context of the management program with reference to the drought. Right. I have mentioned all those programs here, how they were merged, and at present it is implemented through the watershed component of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. PKSY means Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. Right. PRI means Panchayati Raj institutions. Panchayati Raj institutions. That is local bodies, Gram Panchayat, Taluk Panchayat, District Panchayat, urban bodies. So Panchayati Raj institutions. Committee is Hanumant Committee. Sometimes if they ask, you should remember, it is Hanumant Rao Committee. This committee recommended merging of all the, and based on its recommendation, the programs were merged. So when you're writing your means, you don't have to remember the name of the committee. You just say that all the three programs were merged and the new program was Integrated Watershed Management Program. See, micro words, if you leave in the means, there won't be any problem. Right. Then, second program which is implemented is Niranchal program. So this Niranchal program is World Bank assisted program. And here you should remember that Niranchal program is implemented in 8 states. Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, Rajasthan and Telangana. Sorry, 9 states it is there. 9 states it is implemented. So if they ask, you should remember Niranchal, it is World Bank assisted and implemented in 9 states where there is shortage of water. And the objectives is same: rainwater harvesting, changing the behavior of the persons or the people, and making the accessibility of water, right? So it is providing all types of supports to them, and make sure that that areas will help in irrigation facilities, so that groundwater is maintained, water table is maintained there, right? So remember, it is the program which is implemented in 9 states. Niranchal program, right? Current affairs. Along with that, we have the program called as, right, so this program which was started from 2021, Jal Shakti Abhiyan. Jal Shakti Abhiyan. Abhiyan. It started from 2021. Now it has become an annual program. Now today it is referred as an annual program. Annual means every year it is done. Every year it is done. Now this year, it means the last part, 2023, the dates were, it started from March 3 and ended on 30th November. 30th November. Now, the tagline of this Jal Shakti Abhiyan is catch the rain where it falls and when it falls. Its tagline is catch the rain. Catch the rain where it falls and when it falls. Where it falls and when it falls. Right. Now, in the context of India, the rainfall is seen more strongly into 3 parts. That is pre-monsoon shower, pre-monsoon, that is March, April, May. Then we are having the second season called as southwest monsoon, June, July, August, and September. Then we are having the northeast monsoon. Northeast monsoon. So northeast monsoon is in the month of October and November. So starting from March up to November, wherever the rainfall is there, you store the water. That is called as catch the rain where it falls and when it falls. And since from 2021, it has become an annual program starting from pre-monsoon till the northeast monsoon date ends, right? And it consists of 5 intervention areas. The first one is water conservation and rainwater harvesting during all these. Then renovation of the traditional water bodies. So hence it will create employment opportunities also, and the silts and all the plastics, all such wastes which were there, they are removed from the existing lakes and ponds, so that it will become deeper and the water can be stored. We refer that as renovation of the traditional water bodies. The third one is reuse and recharge the structures. It may be bore wells or it can be any type of water resources available in that areas. Then creating new lakes, or new ponds, watershed development. Then large amount of forestation, intensive afforestation, planting more trees, so that they can conserve the water, right? So this is about the Jal Shakti Abhiyan and its 5 intervention areas, which plays an important role in watershed management to have the strong water table presence in the earth, and that too above, in the context of the areas where there is shortage of rainfall, right? Right. Then Atal Bhujal Yojana. So this Atal Bhujal Yojana Yojana. It is from 2021 up to 2025 and 26. It is exclusively watershed management program. It is exclusively watershed management program. And this Atal Bhujal Yojana is implemented. It is implemented in these 7 states: Gujarat, Haryana, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh. It is implemented in these states only. And the total cost of this project is 6,000 crore rupees. That is the cost of this project. And this cost is shared 3,000 crore rupees from the World Bank. That is World Bank credit or loan. Credit from the World Bank, 3,000 crore rupees. And remaining 3,000 crore rupees will be bared by Government of India, not by the state governments. It will be bared by government. And this is called as the Atal Bhujal Yojana. Are all these areas drought prone? Yes, they are the areas where we find droughts are seen. So hence the programs are implemented into these. So when we take Karnataka and Maharashtra, part of Karnataka is in the windward and part is there in the leeward. Part of Maharashtra is in the windward and leeward. So wherever leeward parts are there, so there the watershed managements are there. So that's why I told that they are the regions, they are not the administrative boundaries. So remember, in the initial class itself, I told that regions are not divided or demarcated by the political boundaries. Is it clear? Rainfall is enough for agriculture and fishing. See, when we say rainfall is one of the areas where it can provide moisture, and aquacultures are there which can be provided or which can be seen as for fishing activities. Apart from that, soil is also there. So that you have read in your geography. I'm not discussing that geography part. I'm taking only the disaster part and the points which are important for your disaster management perspective. I'm not linking all the points here. They are the part of your geography. So when we talk about agriculture, you need to have soils, you need to have good amount of temperature, then we should have sunny days so that the flowering of the plants can be seen. So all those are required conditions. In that, one is the water, which is associated with the drought in the context of this discussion. Is it clear? Okay. GP means gram panchayats, right? Then drought risk management, that is whatever we have done now. Drought monitoring and early warning system, conservation of natural buffers, all those, mangroves, etc. Then development of irrigation infrastructure, and that's the reason why we have created PMKSY, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, right? So we have created that Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana infrastructure so that they can provide water to the rain-fed areas. They will be very important in the rain-fed areas. Right. Then drought prone area program. This is what I have discussed, all the programs. Then river interlinking. Right. So river interlinking means it is one of the proposed program where we talk about the transfer of the water from surplus to the deficit. Transfer of water from surplus river basin, surplus river to deficit river basin. River basin. Even though it is controversial, government has already started with this. And in the context of India, the first interstate river linking project is Kane Betwa linkage. Kane and Betwa linkage. And regarding this, you might have studied in your environment class or geography class. So it is transfer of the surplus water from Kane to Betwa. PRI means Panchayati Raj institutions. Panchayati Raj institutions, right? Schemes or subsidies, they are schemes. They are the schemes. So generally, when we say in the schemes, subsidies are given in the form of financial assistance to the local people there. So within the schemes, subsidies are given. Within the schemes, subsidies are given in that, right? Then crop insurance. like Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, where risk transfer is done. Risk transfer is done. Right. Then livelihood planning, it means providing them employment opportunities. Right. Land use planning based on mapping of the areas. Right. So they can help you to understand that which area the storage can be done, which area watershed can be done, which area the settlements is not allowed, which area the agriculture is to be allowed here. So we refer that as land use planning. So this will help you to understand where the watershed is constructed, where you can restrict the settlements. Right. So we refer them as land use planning. Before that, risk part. Then strengthening the welfare schemes, like the schemes, say Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, self-employment schemes, like Ajivika, like public distribution systems. So all the welfare schemes which provides food and employment opportunities to the local people. Then strong response measures should be done. It means increasing their capacities, increasing their capacities. Right. So this is something where we talk about uh, the disaster perspective with reference to the drought. Now, if UPSC asks any question, I don't think there will be anything beyond this. Right. Okay. Now we'll move on to the second aspect. We moved on to the second aspect. So here we completed uh, droughts and we completed the floods. Right. So we completed drought and we completed the floods. Now we'll move on to uh, yes, the questions from previous exams I'll take up. So once we complete some topics, then I'll take up previous year questions and I'll also explain how to write answers for that. So first we'll understand few more topics, then I'll take up UPSC questions. For sure, I'll take up at least 3-4 questions so that they will help you to understand what way your answer should be written. So don't worry, I'll take up some questions, right? Okay. Now, we'll move on to the second part, that is the disaster management associated with the mountains. Mountains. Right. Now, when we talk about the mountains, India has large amount of mountains are there. If you take Himalayas, Western Ghats, Aravalis, Satpuras, Vindhyas. So along with the mountains, we also have plateaus. Plateaus, Malwa Plateau, Bundelkhand Plateau, Baghelkhand Plateau, Chota Nagpur Plateau, Shillong Plateaus, right? Then Dandakaranya Plateau, Deccan Plateau, Telangana Plateau, right? Karnataka Plateau. So many plateaus are there, elevated areas. Plateaus, elevated areas are there with flat surfaces. And we also have hills. We also have hills. So India is blessed with mountains, large amount of plateaus and hills are there. When we talk about these, in spite of having their advantages, so these are the one which are most vulnerable for disasters. They are most vulnerable for disasters. Most vulnerable for disasters. Now, both type of disasters, natural as well as man-made. Natural as well as man-made. Right. So natural as well as man-made. So we find them as same. Now, apart from that, due to impact of global warming and climate change, due to impact of global warming and climate change, their intensities have increased. Due to global warming and climate change. Due to global warming and climate change, their intensities, frequencies, and magnitudes All three have increased. It means they are occurring often and often. Area of operation has also increased, right? Intensity is increased, numbers have increased, and their magnitude have also been increased. Now, in the context of mountains in India, the disasters generally what we see is earthquake in Himalayas, earthquake in Himalayas, then all the mountains, plateaus, hills, they are having the problem called as landslides, sometimes land subsidence, etc. Apart from that, if you see Himalayas are the only mountains in India which have alpine glaciers, which are having glaciers on the top. Glaciers on the top. And these glaciers are associated with an event called as GLOFs, glacial lake outburst floods. They are associated with glacial lake outburst floods. We'll discuss that in detail. Then along with this, we also find that these areas are associated with cloud bursting. They are associated with cloud bursting. So mountains, plateaus, hills, they are most vulnerable in the context of disasters. They can be natural disasters like earthquake, or man-made disasters like forest fires. Man-made disasters like forest fires. Right. So we'll try to understand individual disaster and reason for that. So it becomes easy for us to move the flow. Right. So this is some rough idea about the mountain areas. Now we'll try to understand the disasters associated with the mountain geographical area. Right. Now, when we talk about the mountain areas, so in the context of mountain areas, the first event is cloud bursting. First event is cloud bursting. What is this cloud bursting? Cloud bursting means when we receive heavy rainfall in the very short period of a time. Heavy rainfall or precipitation. PPT means precipitation or rainfall in the short period of a time. And in smaller areas. Two things you should remember: heavy rainfall in short period and in a small geographical area. We refer that as cloud bursting. Now, this cloud bursting is increased due to the impact of the global warming and climate change. So the incidences of cloud bustings have increased due to the global warming. Incidences have increased because of global warming. Right. And apart from that, when we talk about the global warming perspective, this global warming has also affected monsoon patterns in India. It also affected the monsoon rains in India. Now, the example of this is, if you take the southwest monsoon is referred as 100 days rainfall. 100 days rainfall. So it means that the spells of rainfall were longer. The rainy spells were longer. But now, due to the change in the weather patterns and climatic patterns, whatever the volume of the rain which we used to get in the longer period, now the same amount of rainfall we are getting in a short period. Now the same amount of rainfall same amount of rainfall we are getting in very short period. In very short period. So it means that the water what you get in 30 days, the rain what you get in 30 days, now you are receiving that in say 10 days. And because of that, these 10 days when heavy rainfalls will be there, so they will be in the form of large precipitation. Large precipitation. Now, if you see the rainfall patterns, compared to 1961, to 2010, and if you take the 2011 and 2020 rainfall pattern, last 10 years data, a decade data, we find that there is a tremendous change in the areas of rainfall. If you take the areas, so most of the rainfall has increased in the Himalayan region and parts in the Gujarat areas, parts in the Maharashtra and middle areas, and in the coastal areas. We find heavy rainfalls have been seen. So this is an increase in the rainfall areas here. Tamil Nadu part, Union Territory of Ladakh and Kashmir, Uttarakhand, these parts. So there has been a tremendous change in the rainfall pattern because of the impact of global warming and climate change. So we owe the reason for cloud bursting. Many are there, but strong reason is the impact of increasing temperature or global warming. Now, how it makes more vulnerable in the mountain areas. Now, when we talk about the mountain areas, remember that in the context of mountain areas, we always find a mountain which acts as a barrier. Now, in this, we find warm air masses will mix up with the cold air mass. Warm air mass and cold air mass when they combine. So cold air mass and warm air mass, they will have moisture. And these combined air masses, when they collide to the mountain, because of their initial momentum, they raise up. And the raising is very strong, which gets adiabatic cooling. And this adiabatic cooling is very strong. Which creates strong cumulonimbus clouds. In the mountain areas. And when they provide rainfall, so that rainfall will be accompanied by thunderstorm, lightning, and heavy downpours will be there. Heavy downpour. Like this. We refer that as cloud bursting. Heavy downpour. We refer this as cloud bursting. So this is a normal rainfall. And this is called as cloud bursting. Right? And hence, as these moisture-laden winds, when they collide and raises up, and when they bring the rainfall, we refer them as the orographic impact. Right? And hence, in the context of India, we find cloud bursting is seen along the Himalayas, that is in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. We can see them in Sikkim. We can see them in Uttarakhand. etc. And whenever heavy downpours are there, large amount of water reaches to the lowland areas, and this creates flash floods. Flash floods. So cloud bursting will lead to flash floods, where it is very difficult to make the arrangements when large volume of water is moving in the lowland areas. Is it clear? So remember this orographic impact. Rainy spells means the duration of the time where the precipitation is seen. Spells means the time, 3 months, 1 month, 10 days, 15 days. So the time in which the rain occurs, we refer that as spells, time frame of the rainfall. Is it clear? Okay. Now, cloud bursting and these. Now, how do you define the cloud bursting? Now, in the context of India, Indian Meteorological Department defines the cloud bursting. In the context of India, Indian Meteorological Department, IMD, it defines the cloud bursting. Any geographical area, any geographical area which is very smaller, that is say 20 to 30 square kilometers, 20 to 30 square kilometers, and if it receives the precipitation or rainfall for more than 100 millimeters, more than 100 millimeters or 10 centimeters in less than 1 hour. I'm repeating, any geographical area which is smaller, 20 to 30 square kilometers, which receives heavy rainfall of more than 100 millimeters or 10 centimeters of rainfall in an hour, we refer that as cloud bursting. We refer this as cloud bursting, right? Plus events associated with heavy rainfall in the mountain regions, Himalayas, we refer them as the cloud bursting when they create flash floods or when they make the damage of the properties. So these are the two ways in which the cloud bursting is defined in India. One is heavy rainfall in the shortage period of a time. Second one is in the mountain regions where they provide flash floods, invariable about the rainfall. Flash floods, which can make huge loss to the property. So in both the ways, we refer them as cloud bursting. So both are cloud bursting. Now, if any geographical area, if it is receiving 5 centimeters or 50 millimeters of rainfall for 2 consecutive hours, that is in 2 hours, 50 millimeters of rainfall in 2 hours, we refer that as mini cloud bursting. Mini cloud bursting. Right. Mini cloud bursting. So we talk about these two terms. One is the cloud bursting and mini cloud bursting. And many areas we have experienced mini cloud bursting like Kerala, and there is possibility that we can expect this mini cloud bursting even in plain areas, even in the plain areas. Also possible. But most of the vulnerable areas are the mountains, where they give orographic impact. Where they give orographic impact. Right. Now, impacts of cloud bursting. What happens when the cloud bursting occurs? The first one is it will trigger flash floods. Huge volume of water moves downward. Second, it triggers landslide, secondary disaster. When huge amount of water moves downward, it can trigger landslide or soil erosion or other events like it can make short circuit in the settlement areas, which can create again forest fires. Short circuits which can trigger forest fires. So secondary events starts there. Then it affects the infrastructures. So many areas are there where we have infrastructures, maybe the projects like hydroelectricity projects, or maybe some settlements are there, etc. So they all are affected whenever cloud bursting and landslides are there. Then siltation of rivers. So large amount of the water, when it is gushes downward, it brings the silts to the lower areas, and the siltation of river in turn can create floods. It can create the floods because the river becomes shallow. The siltation makes the river shallow. Shallowing of river, right? And during the cloud bursting, large amount of plants are lost, animals are lost, right? And huge losses of humans will be there. So here we are talking in terms of both injuries as well as death. Injuries as well as deaths, both will be there. Then it will create large amount of socio-economic losses. So many agricultural fields will be there in that area. So it will be loss of agriculture land. Many hotels or industries might be there, small one. So they are also affected by that. Economic activities are affected. Then it can also create a psychological impact to the people who have observed them. Trauma, mental trauma. We refer that as psychological effect. Right. So generally, when large amount of water moves downward, we will always have the trauma, and the trauma will make to have certain mental illness in that part. So these are the impacts of cloud bursting, right? Now, disaster risk reduction in the context of cloud bursting. Now, the first one is you should make sure that there should be early warning system improvement. Now, before moving down to this early warning system, you have to remember that cloud bursting is extreme weather based disaster, and extreme weather based disaster will always have early warning system. So cloud bursting is extreme weather based. Extreme weather based. So hence it will have early warning system. Early warning systems are there. So we have early warning systems, but we should increase their effectiveness. And there is always a problem with early warning system. There will always be a problem with early warning system in the context of the cloud bursting. Why? Because area of operation is very small. Area of operation is very small. Small, it means that time period is very small, less than 1 hour, and geographical area is also very small. So smaller areas and smaller time. So hence it is very, very difficult in the context of early warning system. Early warning systems. Now what can be done? So we are having many radars, or we are using many instruments to be done there. Now in this context, to improve the early warning systems here, we use Doppler effects, right? So the Doppler effects are something like the Doppler weather stations or radars. So these Doppler weather radars, they are very important in tracking the wind patterns. Tracking wind patterns. Now the tracking of the wind patterns helps us to understand the wind velocities, the moisture, and the possibility of cloud bursting. It will help us to understand the possibility of precipitation or rainfall. So many areas we have this Doppler weather radar systems. They are very important in the context of disaster management, right? They can identify, they can trace the movement of waters. They can trace the movement of water here, right? Now, apart from that, in your current affairs, when you are reading, you should remember that recently it has been announced that there is a collaboration of NASA, and ISRO, two important institutes. In collaboration, they are launching a mission in the year 2024, maybe this month end. And this mission is referred as NISAR. So this NISAR is synthetic aperture radar system. Synthetic aperture radar mission. Right. So please read this in your current affairs. NISAR, synthetic aperture radar mission. So the two words NI means NASA and ISRO. NI means NASA and ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization. Right. Now, this is cutting edge technology. This NISAR is cutting edge technology. Cutting edge means updated one, recent one. And the benefit of this is this can peer through or it can pass through. It is a radar system. Peer through means pass through clouds and dark areas. It can pass through the dark areas and the clouds, and it can give the movement of winds, movement of water, and movement of land masses. So it gives the movement of wind, movement of water, movement of land mass, or movement of soil. So this has been seen in the context of a very important aspect in the disaster management with reference to collaboration with ISRO. NISAR, NASA, ISRO, synthetic aperture radar mission. So this month or next month, probably they will be launching this mission. So this will help in creating, this will help in having proper early warning systems, right? So Doppler weather radars will be added by NISAR support, right? So hence early warnings improvements are there. So at present we are having radars. It will be added by NISAR, which will give more inputs in the context of disaster management. That's how you should update in the context. Then structural and non-structural measures. Now structural measures means engineering works. Structural means engineering works. So it can be like embankment, constructing of the shelters, right? Embankments, big one areas, strengthening the dams, and sometimes along with that, afforestation, growing trees. So here, when we talk about structural, it can be artificial or it can be natural. So these structure can be artificial and they can be natural. Natural means plants, natural levees, afforestation, And artificial means bricks, rods, synthetic parts. We refer them as structural measures. Now, what are non-structural measures? What are non-structural measures? Non-structural measure means policies, knowledge, schemes, increasing their capacities, increasing their capacities, right? Budget allocation, etc. So all these are referred as non-structural measures in the context of any type of event. So here I'm talking about cloud bursting. So these all are referred as the non-structural. So apart from that, we also have certain mock drills. Mock drills. That is testing the area before the event. So mock drills are also seen experimental basis to check the areas if any such events are seen or not, right? So this is what we refer that as structural and non-structural measures. Any disaster management will have this structural measures and non-structural measures. Any disaster you can link them, right? Then rescue and rehabilitation. Rescue and rehabilitation. The problem here is the moment whenever the cloud bursting takes place, other infrastructures are affected, like the roadways are affected, electricity is affected, so will not be having electricity, internets will not be there, roads to transport will not be there, bridges will collapse, bridges will collapse. So roads, no electricity, bridges collapses, so you can't reach from one area to another areas. Simple. This is two areas, and here you are having the man-made bridge. Now when the bridge is collapsed, you can't reach to this area manually, so it is difficult to reach to that area and provide the support mechanism to that. So hence rescue and rehabilitation becomes more dangerous or more difficult in the context of such events. In such events, right? Then there should be a proper coordination with the local people, coordination with the administration, etc. And suitable training should be given to the local people, to the local people. Training like first aid training to the local people, like basic first aid, or some training where the military persons, the deployed forces can give them with reference to creating the artificial bridges. Bridges, so that they can reach to the areas, right? So these are referred as coordination and training. Mock drills means before happening of the event here, you will check the capacity of that area. If any event happens, what will happen to that? So initially whatever checking is done, we refer that as mock drills. Like in the coastal areas before tsunamis, we make the artificial impact and check that whether the people are prepared, whether the early warning system is working or not. So these we refer them as mock drills. Any type of checking, technical or structural, before the event, we refer that as mock drills. Initial assessment means it is about calculating the risk. Initial assessment depends on, say, coastal areas topography, previous events, and the economic activity in that areas. So based on that, we make initial assessment that if any such events takes place, then what will be the impact of that in this particular area, right? So mock drills, like, yes, you can say like tests, PTS, prelims test series, what you are taking. So they are like your mock part, right? Perfect. Then landslides and glacial avalanches. So we made an effort in understanding the first event, which we referred as cloud bursting. Now we move on to understand landslides and glacial avalanches. Now before moving down to this, we come across a term called as mass movement. Mass movement. And this you have studied in the context of geography. Now, what is mass movement? So it is transfer of debris. It is transfer of rocks, debris, soils. Rocks, debris, soils. From top of mountain downwards. From top of mountain downward. Under the influence of gravity. Under influence of gravity. We refer that as mass movement. Now this mass movement can be very speed, or it can be very slow. It can be very slow. So hence this mass movement can be referred into three ways. See, radar's photos, the moment when we say radar photos, we say that they are aperture like, a dome like structures where they can detect the wind movements, etc. Rehabilitation means you are providing them livelihood paths. You are providing them livelihood paths, right? Now, this mass movement can be of three types. Mass movement can be of three types. That is slide, heave, and flow. Three ways. Slide is where the rock debris move down to the earth very fast. The rock debris, they move very fast. And this is where we can take an example of landslides or rock fall, etc. Landslides, rock falls, where they move very fast. Flow, when the debris mix with water and they move downward, we refer them as flow. It is comparatively slower than the slide. Example, earth flow or mud flow. And sometimes the debris move very, very slowly. We refer that as heave. They move very slow. Generally, in the areas where we find glacier deposits are there or ice deposits are there. Now, because of freezing and thawing, because of freezing of water and melting of water, because of freezing and melting of water, the debris or the soil, it becomes saturated with the water. Saturated with the water. And it moves very slow. It moves very slow. Example, solifluction. Solifluction. Right. So hence, these are the three different types of mass movement generally we see. Heave, flow, and slide. And in this slide, the landslide, rock slides are dangerous one, disastrous one. And we'll try to understand the landslide in the context of disaster. Right. Now, when the ice moves very fast, it makes an accidental path. So the fast movement of rock debris or ices, we refer them as avalanches also. We refer them as avalanches. So avalanches means the mass of a material which is moving very, very rapidly down the slopes. If it is accompanied by ice, we refer that as glacial avalanche. glacial avalanche. If it is accompanied by only the debris, we refer that as debris avalanche. Avalanche means fast moving. Sometimes it can travel at the rate of 70 to 110 kilometers per hour. 70 to 100 kilometers per hour. And imagine if they're traveling with such a high velocities, then they will be having a huge impact on the local people. See, solifluction is a type of mass wasting. Solifluction is a type of mass wasting where the frozen soil moves down the slopes near Arctic or alpine areas. This is your geography part. I'm just revising that, right? So we refer that as solifluction. And earth flow is when the soil mixes with the water and when it moves downward, we refer that as earth flow or mud flow. So these are also types of the mass wasting. And this is also the type of mass wasting: landslides and rock falls. Avalanche is similar to the landslides, but it can be of ice or it can be of rock sides, right? Then a definition: landslide is defined by debris which move downwards under the influence of gravities. So this is what we have to understand in the context of India with reference to disaster management. Landslides, right? Now, the moment when you talk about landslides, generally this becomes more dangerous during monsoon. More dangerous during monsoon. During heavy rainfall, it is there. Now, what happens when the landslides are there? The roads are blocked. The roads are blocked. And when the roads are blocked, then the services which can be provided during and post disaster will become difficult. So it makes difficulty during and post disaster, right? And that is why when the services are not reached in time, the casualties will increase. Injuries will become severe. Injuries will become fatal, and injuries can convert into deaths. So that's why it becomes very difficult to make the crisis management in the context of landslides. I'm not talking about risk, I'm talking about crisis management. Remember, crisis management is done. Crisis management is done during post disaster management. Right? So it is very difficult to make the crisis management. Right. Now, next is reason for landslides. Reason for landslides. Now, geology of that area. Now, in the context of India, take an example of Himalayas. Himalayas. Now, why the landslides are there in Himalayas? The first reason is Indian plate has subducted beneath the Eurasian plate. This is Indian plate, which is subducted beneath the Eurasian plate. And this Indian plate is still grinding. This Indian plate is still grinding. That is moving at the rate of 5 centimeters per year. And this creates friction. And that friction is responsible for a landslide. Second one is the Himalayas are youngest fold mountains. So hence the soil is unstable soils. And hence it is vulnerable for landslides. Third one is the Himalayan slopes are steep towards India. The slopes are steep towards India. And the fourth one is As it is a region where the two plates are meeting, so earthquakes are vulnerable, and earthquakes make impact on that areas. So it is a region where the two plates are meeting, and that makes earthquake. An earthquake can trigger landslide. It can trigger landslide, right? So geology of that area and steep slopes. Shifting cultivation and faulty agriculture practices. So shifting cultivation is also referred as slash and burn, right? And faulty agriculture means when you are planting the crops, there is something called as contour flowing or contour farming, where you grow the crops parallel to the slopes. So if you are doing it perpendicular, then large amount of erosion can be seen. So we refer that as faulty agriculture practices, like shifting cultivation or not maintaining the contours, not maintaining the contours, right? Deforestation is done for hydroelectricity projects, hydro projects, or many such activities, or construction activities, for construction activities like road construction, etc. So whenever deforestation is done, you have removed the vegetation, and the moment when the vegetation is removed, so that area becomes highly susceptible for landslides. When the vegetation is removed, it becomes prone to landslides. Then construction, mining activities, and overloading. So they also are responsible to change the impact of topography on that areas, like hydroelectricity projects in Uttarakhand. Example, hydroelectricity projects, right? Mining activities, which make the area vulnerable. The top part of the mountain becomes weaker. The vegetation is removed. Overloading will also have an impact. Overloading will also have an impact, which reduces the carrying capacity. Overloading means when we talk about unsustainable tourism, unsustainable tourism, or large amount of the infrastructures which are constructed there, which cannot hold the resistance. So they can create large amount of impacts in that areas. Deforestation means cutting up of the trees. Overgrazing. So generally in the context of these mountains, a type of grazing activity is seen. Seasonal grazing, we refer that as the transhumance. Transhumance. Right. So seasonal migration along with their livestock resources. Seasonal migration along with their livestock resources. So generally, if we take that in the Himalayas, we find this transhumance activity is done by the tribal peoples like Gujjars, Bakarwalas, Gaddis, Bhutias, etc., where they move along with their livestock resources. So due to increasing of their livestock numbers, we find that large amount of vegetation has been removed, and that is responsible for landslides or huge amount of soil erosion in that areas. Then heavy rainfalls like cloud bursting, heavy rainfall like cloud bursting is there. And undercutting of rivers in Himalayas. Now, what is undercutting? Now, if this is a mountain, This is a mountain, mountain 1 and mountain 2. Now here we find a river is flowing in this area. A river is flowing in this area. So this river has an impact on the mountains. It erodes this area. It erodes this region. It makes erosion below that region. And we refer that as undercutting of rivers in the mountains. So this is called as undercutting. It reduces this, and the support to the mountain will not be there. So this portion will collapse. When it removes this patch, so the mountain will collapse, the wall will collapse. And we refer that as undercutting of rivers in the Himalayas. Livestock means cattle, buffaloes, ships, etc. We refer them as livestock resources. Right. So livestock means cattle, buffaloes, we refer them as, or we say animal husbandry. Animal husbandry. Right. Okay. Now, if you take the vulnerability profile of India, according to the National Disaster Management Authority, we find that 12% of the geographical area is vulnerable for landslides, which includes the Himalayan region, northeastern parts, western Ghats. So 1.8 million square kilometers, which are in the northeastern Himalayas, including Darjeeling and Sikkim, right? And 0.14 millions in the northwestern part of Himalayas, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, and Jammu. This is northwestern part of Himalayas, right? And then we find that it is also dominant in the eastern Ghats. So here we are having Arakku Valley. Arakku Valley in eastern Ghats. Arakku Valley is known for Arakku coffee. And near this Arakku Valley, we are having a forest called as Sheshachalam forest, and that is known for red sanders, right? Arakku Valley in the eastern Ghats. And then western Ghats also we find. Right. So we find this is the vulnerability profile of India. We find they are in the Himalayan regions. And we also find them in the eastern Ghats and western Ghats, which are more vulnerable in the context of that. Steep slopes means, see, when you're having this, they cannot hold much of the land. So they will fall downward. We refer them as steep slopes, right? Now, the disaster management, when we say, the nodal agency which is used or which is there for the disaster management of landslide in India is Geological Survey of India. It is the nodal agency. As Geological Survey of India is responsible for coordinating and undertaking the geological studies in the landslide hazard mitigation. So geological studies means they take the previous data, and based on that, they prepare zonation map. And this zonation map plays a very important role in the disaster management. It plays an important role in the disaster mode. So we refer that as zonation map. We refer that as landslide zonation map. Landslide zonation map, right? And it is also responsible for monitoring all the events there, monitoring of all the events in that areas. Nodal agency means the biggest part. The in the schools, when we say headmaster is the highest part, highest authority. Nodal means highest authority. highest authority to implement and monitor that. Right. Now, when we talk about the disaster management, these things you should remember. There should be remediation practices, early warning system, building capacities, public awareness and education. So generally, all these factors, we refer them as structural and non-structural measures. Structural and non-structural measures. Now, they can be seen in the landslide as well as avalanches. So they are seen in the both context, pre-disaster management and post-disaster management, which talks about understanding the risk and also managing the crisis. Managing the crisis. They are common in all. Yeah, they are common for landslides because hilly areas, generally we find the same type of issues are seen. Right. Now, bit more on this is, what about the early warning systems in the context of the landslides? Early warning systems, again, remember, landslides can be due to earthquake, which is difficult to monitor, but landslides due to heavy rainfall can be monitored. So hence early warning system are seen in two ways, that is site specific and region specific. Site specific and region specific. Region specific. Region means larger area, site means smaller areas. So we find early warning systems are in two ways. Site specific means conducted on specific slopes where the landslides takes place, so that it will help us to understand where the landslides are most vulnerable. Smaller areas. So these are generally in the smaller areas. To understand the responses, initially it has started, or we are thinking to do in a pilot basis in the 8 location. Region specific means larger areas, wider geographical areas. To assess the relationship between rainfall, landslides in the regions. Rainfall, landslides in the areas. Now at present we are making effort to put the pilot basis into 2 states, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal. Now in Tamil Nadu, it is in Nilgiris, that is Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats. Wherever Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats meet, we refer that as Nilgiri Mountains. And in West Bengals, it is in Darjeeling. Nilgiris and Darjeeling. So site specific and region specific, which can give more idea about early warning system. So here it is about improving the early warning system. Improving an effective early warning system. Now here also you can use NISAR. NISAR can be used in the later stage. Then preparedness. So preparedness is to reduce and mitigate the impact. Now generally preparedness talks about increasing the capacity. It is about increasing the capacity or resistance. Now increasing the capacity or resistance of an individual, of a community, of environment, of that areas, right? Then landslide zonation mapping. Now this landslide zonation mapping is very important. The moment when they prepare a map, so this map is very important to take up the activities like, it will help us to understand and restrict the settlements in the areas. If the area is vulnerable, then they will make restriction of the settlement. If the area is vulnerable according to the map, then they will make regulation and restriction of constructed activities. It will be regulation and restricting restriction of construction activities. Like dams will not be allowed, roads will not be allowed, right? Apart from that, once you know the map, you can identify which area is used for afforestation. It will help us to understand which geographical area which is having a threat, and it can be used for afforestation. So in a very simple term, this landslide zonation mapping will help us to use or help us to make use of effective land use. So it will help us to make effective land use in the mountain areas. Then following the guidelines which are given by National Disaster Management Authority. Guidelines. We'll discuss what are guidelines in the later. And then again, structural and non-structural measures. Engineering, nature-based part, and policies, etc. We refer them as structural and non-structural measures. Right. So this is what the context of the landslides are there. Right. Structural and non-structural. See, NISAR means the same. NASA and ISRO's synthetic radar aperture mission. Right. So when we talk about the landslides or any type of cloud burstings, early warning systems are systematically seen when we are having a top quality of the early warning systems are there. Take an example of NISAR, which will be next, and radars, which can give more refined data of movement of the air there. Right. So early warning systems, it can be site specific or it can be regional part. Right. So these are the same Doppler radar ones, which we see in the landslides, which we see in the cloud bursting as well. Right. So tomorrow we'll take care of the other parts. That is the areas associated with the National Disaster Management guidelines. So we'll take up the guidelines in the tomorrow's class. Yes, from the PPTs you can tackle all the previous year questions. I don't think you will be having any difficulty. Moreover, you should be linking that with your current affairs, right? So if you are having good amount of the current affairs data, then I don't think you will have any part. Undercutting of the river. See, if this is a mountain, now in the mountain, if any river is flowing, so this is a river which is flowing. When the river is flowing in the mountain, it will always make the erosion in the side area. So this area of the land is eroded. And when it is eroded, this portion will collapse due to undercutting of river. And this is referred as landslide due to river undercutting. Landslide due to river undercutting, right? See, generally, when we talk about the disaster management, NCRT books can help you. And apart from that, guidelines or the guidelines which are issued by National Disaster Management Authority and PPTs, I can say they will help you a lot in the context of your preparing notes. See, gully erosion means, remember that when we talk about the mountains are there, initially they will create rills, and these rills will combine to create gully. And when there is an erosion from the gullies, we refer that as gully erosion. And these gullies combine to form the streams. And this is what you have read in your geography. Right. So we'll conclude the class. Tomorrow we'll meet up at the same time and we'll discuss the remaining topics. Thank you. Yeah, Byju's book can help you a lot. Byju's book can help you out, but always update with your current affairs. Update with your current affairs. Thank you. अच्छा है ना फिर